Are you curious about wheel pose? Then this is going to be the short educational piece for you. We're going to talk about some strategies on how to help with that wrist flexibility and raising on up so you can come into that actual full wheel pose. That is coming up right now. Hello, magnificent human beings. My name is Landon Slaughter, and this channel is all about fixing the kinks in your yoga practice by deepening your knowledge so that you can create a truly transformative practice for yourself. And today we are going to look at wheel pose. If this is your first time here, please do not forget to subscribe. Have lots of awesome yoga content coming at you throughout the week. And wheel pose is often one of those postures where I think we look around the room and we see people just coming on up, and then we see other folks maybe struggling, and I've struggled with this pose a lot before myself. And so I want to first talk about something that goes beyond even the strength and the flexibility thing. Is sometimes there is a misalignment of one of these carpals or maybe even metacarpals in our hand and our wrist, where we can't actually get that full wrist flexibility. So if you're looking at this, if your hand feels fine here, but then when you start to get to that 90-degree angle or even past that 90-degree angle, and there's lots of pain or aching in your wrist, then you could have one of these bones that are kind of jammed up in your wrists. And I talk about this actually in the plank pose video, because it's the same thing. If you're in that plank, and your wrists start to kind of hurt, then could be you have one of those bones out of alignment. So the best thing to do is to probably ask around and see if you can find a friend who would recommend a good, reputable chiropractor to be able to put one of those bones back into place, because that's what happened to me. One of the couple of the bones were jammed up in my wrist, and was able to get those back into place. And then I was able to do plank with a lot more confidence, and definitely wheel pose, especially because you really need, some of that wrist flexibility in your wheel pose. So that's the first thing. See if, you're having trouble in your wrists, you may want to consult a chiropractor before you start trying, this posture. And beyond that, then we need to look at wrist flexibility. So flexors, extensors, right? All of those muscles in our forearms. And we'll see people in tabletop kind of stretching this out, right? So they spin their fingertips around, and you can lean back a little bit. You kind of lean forward, and you feel this right away in your forearms. And this is an excellent strategy to be able to really get into those wrists and do this pose comfortably, because when we start off in wheel, we don't really do this very often in our day-to-day lives. So this is kind of an odd position for our hands, and this is where they need to be in our wheel pose. So definitely spending some time to stretch out those wrists would be beneficial to you. And going gently on your wrists, we don't want to rush this process. If you can't do wheel pose at all because of, a lot of tightness in your wrists and your forearms, it's going to take a while of kind of stretching things out every day before that can release, and then you will be able to have that strength to come on up into wheel. Okay, so now beyond all of that, let's look at the actual process of getting into wheel pose. And I wish I could tell you there was a magical trick or a magical hack for coming into wheel, but the fact is every person's body is different, and so it's difficult to be able to say, oh, you need to put your hands here, your feet here, because some of us are top heavy, bottom heavy. It's all different. But there are a few basic principles we can watch for. So you can always substitute for bridge, right? You get to wheel pose in a flow and you don't feel like doing it, you can simply lift up into your bridge. That's definitely an option. Wheel pose, fingertips pointed down next to your shoulders. And there's a little bit of an intuitive play that happens here. So if we're just here laying on the mat and we put our hands down and we try to lift in to wheel, you're not going to be able to raise up. There's this kind of waddle thing that needs to happen between both our hands and our feet. So if you just kind of start moving back and forth, you're rolling back and forth on those shoulder blades. So I am actually almost in a little bit of a bridge pose because I'm lifting my hips off and I'm balancing here on my shoulders. So this is kind of that first part of your wheel, right? Now here's where things get tricky is, like I said, that hand positionment of where your hands are is going to be a little bit different for everybody. You want to keep them relatively close to your shoulders. You don't want it way out here, and you don't want them, I guess, underneath your head because that's just awkward. But it's going to be a little bit different, right? And feet should be about hips distance apart, but whether they're right next to your glutes or down a little bit, it's going to vary from person to person. But this is definitely one of those principles that we need to pay attention to, is not putting a lot of weight in the tip of your skull. So we see a lot of people get set up and then they come to here and then they'll just relax a lot of weight into the top of their head. And this is a bad idea because I don't think you should ever put a lot of weight into the top of your skull because it taxes those vertebrae in your neck. But especially here because our neck is also bent. Our neck is bent and we're putting, so really, it's best to avoid putting hardly any weight into the top of your skull. But it is important to, use that as almost like a balancing point and still hold a lot of strength in your arms. So you're maybe only putting 20% of your body weight, 10% of your body weight, into the top of your skull. So you can hold here, reposition your hands as you need, and then lift and come on up. And if you can't get that lift, then this is a, arm strength thing where you're just going to have to work on that arm strength throughout your practice to be able to lift up. Two things when you are up in your wheel. One is don't let your neck drop really far back because that is not great for our necks because it's not used to bending that far back all the time, and we can look really, really far back, and so we don't want to obviously, damage anything in our neck. So keeping a slight bit of strength and, I guess, tautness is the right word, in your neck so that you don't look too far back. And then when you are up in your wheel, to get a little bit more height and length and come up, get that nice arc, engage your glutes a little bit, not by a lot, but just a little. That will really help to bring those hips up. So, demonstrating this. Remember, don't look way far back, rather maybe about here. It's very subtle, right? And then instead of holding right where you are, engaging your glutes helps to bring you up even more. And then very gently coming on down, right? You can balance a little bit on your skull and then laying back down. So that is a look at your wheel pose. Also, another tip is if you have stuff going on in your shoulders and your shoulders feel really weird or tweaked, then probably best to avoid this posture as well. It's interesting because wheel pose is, I think, for very healthy bodies that have most everything in alignment and can come into this posture. This is definitely a more an advanced pose. This is, in my opinion, not some type of restorative or healing yoga posture. I think it's a back bending, strength building, type posture. So if you're not feeling it, don't do it. But if you are in pretty good shape and things feel good, then I would say feel free to explore in your wheel pose. Thank all of you so much for being here. Do not forget to subscribe, thumbs up, like, share, leave a comment. Thanks from my heart to all yours. Namaste.